We're going to graph some parent radical functions. The first one we want to graph f of x equals square root of x. So you want to think of numbers that you can square root. We can't square root negatives. For example, -1, nothing times itself will give us -1, but we can square root 0. So the square root of 0 is 0. We can also square root 1. Square root of 1 is 1. We don't want to put 2 because that's going to give us a decimal. So think of one more thing that you can take the square root of. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, so that means the square root of 4 is 2. And if you needed to do another one, again, I would work backwards. We know that 3 times 3 is 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. Now we want to take the fourth root of x. We can't take the even root of negatives. So we can't take the square root, the fourth root, the sixth root. For example, again, -1. Nothing times itself 4 times will give us -1. But we can do 0, and that's going to be 0. 0 times itself 4 times will give us 0. And 1, fourth root of 1 is 1. We don't want a fourth root 2, that'll give us a decimal. So again, work backwards, do 2 to the fourth and see what that gives you. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. We can take the fourth root of 16 and that'll give us 2. Notice the shapes of the square root and the fourth root look similar, and that would be if you did any even root. So the sixth root would also look very similar. Now we're going to look at some odd root functions. We can take the odd root of a negative number. So for example, if we do -1, the cube root of -1 is -1. So -1 times -1 is +1 times -1 is -1. Cube root of 0 is 0, cube root of 1 is 1. If you only need to plot 3 points, then those would work. If you need to plot 1 or 2 more, again, work backwards. If you start with 2 now, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So cube root of 8 is 2. And if we wanted to go backwards also, -8 is going to be -2, because -2 times -2 is +4, times -2 is -8. So notice this graph kind of looks like an S. And then the fifth root of x, same thing, any odd root, if you just memorize, these points will always work. Fifth root of -1 is -1, fifth root of 0 is 0, fifth root of 1 is 1. If you needed one more, you could do the 2's. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So you can do 32, fifth root of 32 is 2, and fifth root of -32 is -2. And notice again, odd root graphs also look the same. They just are growing at different rates. In the next video, we'll look at how we can do some transformations of radical functions.